have a reading this morning from Rays of the One Light. It's a book of weekly commentaries of the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita written by Swami Kriyananda. This week our reading is, Faith is a call to prayer. Prayer is a call to faith. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapters 7 and 21, we read, Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be open unto you. Verily I say unto you, if you have faith and doubt not, if ye shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. Paramhansa Yogananda showed by his own example that prayer is a power, provided we believe deeply in that power. When our thoughts and feelings are strongly focused and then united in growing awareness to the divine presence within, they can bring even seemingly unrealistic wishes to fulfillment. When Paramhansa Yogananda was in charge of his school in Ranchi, India, he took the boys on occasional outings to the surrounding countryside. There was a waterfall not far away, he told Swami Kriyananda, where I took them sometimes. It was dangerous to cross there. But I would cry out to the boys, Do you believe in God? Yes, they would shout back enthusiastically. And so we always crossed in safety. Years later, after I'd gone to America, one of the teachers tried to do the same thing, but he lacked spiritual power. One of the boys slipped on a rock and was drowned. Thus, the master explained, belief alone is not enough. It must be united to one pointed awareness which leads to self-realization. The Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter underscores the necessity for such one-pointed concentration. Whenever the mind, fickle and restless, wanders off from its concentration, let the meditating yogi withdraw it resolutely, spurning every distraction, no matter how alluring, and bring it back again and again under the control of the self. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This is a reading from Whispers from Eternity by Paramhansa Yogananda. With the soft finger touches of my soul intuition, I tuned the radio of my inner perception. At first I caught only the sounds of nearby experience. Then came a symphony of inner harmony, followed by sweet strains from my heart's orchestra of finer feelings. And then came the swelling chorus of my age-long cravings for thee. All these I caught on the radio of my soul as I kept tuning my perception, waiting to catch the whispers of thy voice, O guardian angel of all souls. With infinite patience, I went on tuning my radio. At last, when I was almost prepared to give up further trying, thy song burst upon my heart. Oh, let me broadcast through my every word now the chorus of thy songs. The reading today and the subject covers not only prayer, but really how to live the spiritual life. One time in the past, I was on Swami Kriyananda's staff, and he gave me a project to work on. And it was a challenging project, and I needed to find someone to help me. And it wasn't just anybody. I had to find someone who was uniquely qualified, and I couldn't think of anybody, so I prayed and I meditated. And I did what we all do, ask Divine Mother and God to help me and maybe even to perform a miracle and send someone to me. And only about one day later, I saw Swamiji, and he looked at me seriously, and he said, "You know, Divine Mother's not going to do it all for you." And I realized I needed to pick up the phone and start calling people. Even if I didn't know what I was doing or who I was calling, I need to start acting. Obviously, acting from a sense of inner attunement and meditating and from a center. But I did have to start doing something. And that's the difference between belief, which is somewhat more passive. I read this, a miracle can happen, I believe it, it's possible, compared to faith, which has power based on experience and power based on engagement, involvement, and action. I was explaining this in a more philosophical way one time at a class, and this woman came up to me afterwards, a very elderly woman, and she said, "My grandfather used to say the exact same thing that you just said." And I thought, well, this is interesting. Her grandfather was a Vedantin yogi philosopher. And then she went on and she said, "He always told me you can't steer a parked car." And her grandfather was a yogi and a Vedantin and a philosopher. And this is something that really is at the essence of so much of what we do at Ananda. And Swami Kriyananda over the years has said the same thing in so many ways, so many times, that we all have to act. We're compelled to act, but that we want to act as an instrument of God, but that God's not just going to start working through us and we just kind of have to just sit there and wait for God to start doing it. We have to act, but we have to try to tune our will to God's will. And when we act in that way, then we start seeing that miracles start happening. And I can say this from so many times in my own life. And there's two particular instances that quickly come to mind. I won't go into detail, but twice in my life I've been in experiences and situations where I could have and certainly should have died because of catastrophe that I found myself in, self-created in both cases. And in order to be saved and in order to get out of these situations, in both cases, it was a miracle that happened to help me. But in both times, I had to act with all my willpower, with all my energy, with all my strength, and do it with God. And that's what drew the miraculous response that saved me in both situations. If I had just, again, laid back and said, "Okay, Lord, I'm really ready for a miracle here. Lay it on me. I'm ready." And I'd still be waiting, or I probably wouldn't be here right now. But I acted, and I acted with a sense of, "Lord, we're in this together. You probably helped me get in this situation, and I know my own actions also helped. I'm going to do everything I can, but we're going to have to find a way out of this. So what are we going to do here?" And I did put it on God in both situations. I acted, but I also put it back onto the grace of God and Divine Mother. And in both situations, through that combination of acting in attunement to God's will, putting out all the energy that I could, and being receptive and open and depending on a miracle and on the grace of God, that miracle happened. And this happens so many times in so many ways over the years at Ananda. I can't tell you how much Ananda is almost based on that daily attitude. Not only when things are really tough and we really need a miracle, but just every day, living for God, living with God, expressing yourself in prayer nonstop. And you'll find that when you act in this way and put out as much energy as you can, but also depending on the grace of God and waiting for miracles to happen, but not necessarily demanding or expecting them, but they do start happening every day in your life when you live in that way. And in a way, this really is the miracle of Ananda. Yogananda said that success on the spiritual path is 25% our effort, 25% the Guru's effort on our behalf, 50% God's grace. He also said that 25% that's our effort is 100% of our trying and doing the best that we can. And you'll find that in action or in meditation, this is a universal truth. And the reading today is more about prayer and meditation, about the one focused mind that we have to have when we meditate. But when we do it with that focus and concentration, but also receptivity and openness to God, then miracles start happening. And the greatest miracle of all starts happening, which is we all start becoming absolutely transformed through God's grace. Swami Kriyananda writes about how to do this in meditation, how to approach meditation. Because we have so many techniques, and we're told to concentrate, and yet it's so hard to concentrate at times. And so what do we do, and how do we focus our mind? Because it is difficult. I think every one of us knows that. He writes, the devotee must exercise constant patience and determination. He must bring his mind back again and again to its spiritual focus. Until he learns concentration, although years will pass, he will find himself making no substantial progress at all. So how do we do that? He says, for one's concentration to be deep and prayerful, it must spring from a consciousness of deep attunement with God. The human will, finding itself absorbed in God's will, finds itself reinforced by His infinite power. No miracle is too great for anyone whose consciousness is perfectly attuned to the divine consciousness. So yes, act, work in this world, do whatever you have to do, but do it with this constant remembrance of God, a constant dance with God, a constant just, we're in this together, Lord. This is sure an interesting situation we're in now. How are we going to get out of it? Rather than saying to God, how are you going to get me out of it? Say, how are we going to get out of this situation here? And do it with a sense of joy. And if you do it in that attitude, you'll find that you also have the deepest sense of inner freedom. No matter how difficult things get, no matter your moods, your suffering, ill health, good health, all these things come and go in our lives. But if you make this sort of the pole star of your life, this constant attitude of doing things, everything with God, prayer, meditation, and activity, you'll find that everything starts working out better and better, and you'll start seeing miracles in your life where God's hand comes down and either guides us, makes things possible for us, performs miracles, guides us in saying the right thing to say and in doing the right thing. And this really is the essence of the spiritual path. And this is also just the essence of Ananda. If you have spent years here, you look around and you look at almost every single person here and you see a miracle in some way because you know what they've been through in their lives, some karma they've had to deal with, some challenge they've faced. And you realize that there's a miracle happening every day here, and miracles are possible in the way that we receive and make miracles happen. We don't make them happen, but by our attunement to God's grace, miracles do start happening, whether you ask for them or not. There's a beautiful story that Swami Kriyananda tells, and he's been telling this actually more and more often lately. And in a way, this story really, and what I've been talking about, is really the goal of life, in a sense. I know we all have different goals in our lives, and we all have things that we want to achieve, and we have certain ideas, but let me just share you a secret, the secret of the goal in life. And this really is the real goal for all of us, which is no matter what you do, just as I've been saying, just as Yogananda taught us, just as Swamiji has taught us all these years, do it all with God every moment. When you can do that, it doesn't matter what you're doing outwardly, raising your children, your job, success, failure, ups and downs of this world. If you do it with that sense, you will be free even in that moment because you'll be in God's grace, you'll feel God's joy, and you'll just be experiencing this great dance of creation, our part in it. And there's a sense of real inner joy in that. And you see this in Swami Kriyananda's life again and again through all the ups and downs, health karma and physical and all this stuff. And there's a joy deep inside behind all of that, no matter what's going on. And that's because he's always doing it with God and for God. And when we do that, there's just the deepest sense of divine freedom. The story that Swami tells a lot is about an Indian saint named Ram Prasad. And Ram Prasad, he was a great lover of God as the Divine Mother. And so he would have this attitude that we've been talking about, of doing everything with Divine Mother and talking to Divine Mother all day. And because of that, she would play with him, just like playing with a child. And so one day, for example, there are many stories from his life, but this is the one that Swamiji tells. He says that Ram Prasad had to work on fixing the fence around the garden on his property. And he needed someone to help him because the fence was such that one person had to be on each side of the fence, weaving this cord through the fence from each side and pulling it through and then handing it back to the other person. So he asked his daughter if she could help him with the fence that day. And she said yes. And, so he went out, started working on his fence and working in the garden. And finally he needed help. And sure enough, his daughter just happened to show up at that moment. And she helped him all day long fixing this fence. And then she went away when they were done. And he was finished. And he went back home. And he saw his wife. And he said to his wife, "Oh, it was so sweet. Our daughter came and helped me all day with the fence." And his wife said, "Well, that's impossible. She's been on the whole other side of town all day long with her friends, so far away that it was impossible that she could have helped you." And Ram Prasad realized that it was the Divine Mother who was helping him, taking on the form of his daughter all day long and helping him repair that fence. And in a way, whether Divine Mother plays a trick like that, or whether she's in the form of our daughters, our sons, our spouses, our friends helping us, you'll see that if you take that attitude and do everything with God, God suddenly, miraculously starts manifesting, and if not manifesting, working through our dear loved ones who suddenly become an instrument for God, and our daughters and our sons and our friends and our spouses and our loved ones. Ram Prasad actually wrote a song based on that experience, which we don't hear very much of. And it really explains what we've been talking about today, which is really the way to divine freedom. And after he had this experience, he wrote, "O mind, why do you keep away from the mother's feet? O mind, meditate on the mother. You will then get mukti." Mukti is divine freedom. "Tie then the mother's feet with the cord of devotion. So bad is your luck that though having eyes, you did not see that the mother came as your daughter and tied the fence with the devotee." And so such, I think, very, very often are our eyes, that we don't see God as Divine Mother, as the Guru, as our beloved coming and working through our daughter, our son, and all those that we know. And again, when we live life in that way, it does become a beautiful dance. Yogananda used to chant a very beautiful song from India about this dance of the devotee with God. And it was based on Radha, the great devotee of Krishna, and her love for the Lord as Krishna. And the words are Radhe, Radhe, Radhe Govinda Jai, spirit and nature dancing together, victory to spirit and victory to nature. So try to see our spiritual lives not as us praying for a miracle from God or help from God, but try to see it as spirit and nature dancing together, the devotee and God dancing together through this life. And you'll find that through your sufferings, through your joys, through health, through sickness, through all the different things that come in our lives, that if you do this more and more, you will be free more and more. You will feel God's presence within. You will feel divine joy within. And most of all, you will be free from the bondage of this world and this karma that can tempt us so easily with the hope that, oh, if you just do this, everything's going to work out fine. And I think most or all of us have tried that enough times that we know that it's not going to be found there. It is going to be found here. And this is the way we do it, the way that Swamiji has written in this reading today, in the way that we've been talking about it. So let's practice this, let's live this, and let's find freedom in this way. Joy to you.